much, Karen, and it's really great to be here with you all. I'm gonna share my screen here and then we can go ahead and get started. Okay, can everyone see that okay? Okay, awesome. Well, hi, I'm Allie Weberg and I'm the Oregon Community Engagement Manager at Intel. I support our volunteer program. And today I'm joined by three amazing women who work in manufacturing at Intel. And they're going to share a little bit about themselves and what they do and the why behind what they do. So we'll start by taking a look at the agenda here. I'm going to share just a brief overview of Intel and a video, and then we'll hear from our three speakers, Ashley, Vanessa, and Eileen. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with some Q&A, and you can share anything that you found interesting or that you have questions about. So to kick us off, Intel has been innovating and investing in Oregon since 1974, so for almost 50 years. And Intel is a global company, but what's really cool is that the heart of Intel's research and development is actually right here in Oregon. And Intel's purpose is to create world-changing technology that improves the life of every person on the planet. Technology is super important, and it seems like almost every aspect of our lives is becoming more digitized. And so Intel is really at the forefront of that innovation and creating new technologies. And so now I have a short video that will take you inside an Intel factory. As much as I would have loved to bring you all there to witness it in person, I've never been inside an Intel factory. They're very restricted. So the second best thing will be watching this video. But before I press play, you'll notice that they're wearing these white uniforms, and these are called bunny suits. And our engineers and technicians have to wear these inside the factories to keep everything really clean and not contaminate anything. And a fun fact is that the inside of an Intel factory is actually cleaner than a surgical room at a hospital. So very clean. And I'm realizing that I don't think I shared my audio, so I'm going to stop share and then reshare with the audio so that you can hear the video. Okay. Okay, I'm going to press play and you let me know if you can hear it. Okay, so I really like that video because like when I first saw it, I was just like, wow, that looks like a whole other world. And I wasn't really sure what happened behind the door. So it kind of takes you behind the curtain, so to speak, and shows you what goes on inside an Intel factory. And now, without further ado, let's hear from our Intel speakers. And Ashley is our first speaker today, so I'll pass it off to you, Ashley.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. So Like Ali said, my name is Ashley, and my current role right now is in global supply chain as a business risk manager and a program manager. But that's something that happened very recently, like in the past month or two. Um, so I guess I can start from the beginning. Um, I grew up in Florida, so I have my bachelor's of science and my master's of engineering from the University of Florida in environmental engineering. And at the time when I was searching for jobs right out of college, I didn't know that Intel hired environmental engineers. At that time, I didn't even know that Intel manufactured in the US, so that was a big thing. And when I interviewed and got the job, I first started at their New Mexico site. Um, so Ali mentioned that Oregon has one of the bigger sites. That's where a lot of the research and development happens. But we also have a lot of what we call high volume manufacturing sites across the United States and also across the world. And one of those places is near Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is where I started. After a couple years, I decided to transition to the Oregon team. The team here in Oregon, like I said, does a lot of more technology and development. So you see a lot of the newer science happening. You see a lot of interesting chemicals, and you interact with a lot more interesting projects, which is why the site in particular is fascinating. And more recently, I switched over from kind of that engineering world to more looking at the supply chain itself. Um, in particular around responsible supply chain. So making sure that our environmental, social, and governance requirements are met and even exceeded. If you guys are ever particularly interested in reading about it, we do have like a corporate social responsibility report that's available on the Intel website that goes super into detail about all the things that we're doing. Um, for the pictures, these are just fun things that I like to do outside of work. I like doing naturey things. Um, on the chiller side, I'll do like maybe a 5 mile hike, nothing more than 7 miles. I usually like to take my dog. He's right there in the bottom right picture. I live in Portland, so there are a lot of fun like sports events um, and concert events that I like to go to. And then I'm also part of a local book club, which um, is super fun, and we have like cue parties every so often. And that's me.
Great, thank you, Ashley. Our next speaker is Vanessa, so I'll pass it off to you, Vanessa.
Great. My name is Vanessa Cullinane, and I have worked at Intel for 17 years. I started at Intel right after I graduated from the University of Washington, where I majored in chemical engineering. I grew up in Seattle, so it was a natural fit to go to UW, and I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. My first role at Intel was as a photolithography process engineer. Photolithography is a big fancy word for using light to create the tiny features that make computer chips work. Putting those onto a piece of silicon because they're too small to make with a mechanical device of any kind. So I did that for about 10 years. And then I moved to work on the parametric testing, which is where we electrically test the wafers after they're finished in the factory to make sure that they work properly. And I did that for about 6 years. And today I am a systems integration engineer, which is kind of a job that I got to make for myself. And I am very fortunate that I get to do the things that I love to do. Throughout my career, I always had a special interest in data, like getting it out of databases, analyzing it, making graphs, and really turning data into useful information that helps me or other people make better decisions or organize the work that needs to be done to keep a factory running. And also have a lot of interest in systems. So in a manufacturing environment, we don't just have people running around all willy-nilly. hopefully. We shouldn't run a factory based on vibes. We have systems and processes in place in order to get things done. And I like to make sure that our systems work well and don't cause more problems than they solve. And I like systems that make it hard or ideally impossible for a person to make a mistake. So that's the work I enjoy doing. Like I said, I have a degree in chemical engineering, but I don't use a lot of what I learned in chemical engineering classrooms at work. You generally need to have a good idea of like the physical phenomena that are at play in your portion of the process. But the most important things that you need to get, that I needed to get out of school, are how to solve problems and approach things. A lot of the problems I see at work don't resemble the homework problems or test questions that I saw in school. For starters, most of the problems that we see take longer than an hour or two to solve. And for most of our problems, we usually work in teams to solve them because many heads are better than one head. And it's important that those teams are diverse. Diversity and inclusion are things that I'm really passionate about, and I'm very proud to work at a company that shares those values. I also want to add that I do have disabilities. I have hypermobility spectrum disorder, which makes me susceptible to injuries and causes me to experience chronic pain. And I also have ADHD. And I want you all to know that there is a place for you in manufacturing and/or engineering. Regardless of your race, gender expression, background, disabilities, etc. We need people with diverse backgrounds in order to solve tough problems. And I hope that you'll consider bringing your unique perspectives and ideas into the manufacturing field because we'll be better with you. Outside of work, I have 2 chocolate labs that take up a lot of my time. Their names are Hazel and Murphy. And I also enjoy spending time with my family. You can see them. We went to Norway. That's my mom's sister and one of my nieces down in the bottom over the summer. And I like to travel and just learn things and get new experiences and make my dogs happy.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Vanessa. And last but not least, we have Eileen.
Hi, everyone, and special thanks to Ashley and Vanessa for kind of laying the groundwork. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. My name is Eileen. Like Ali said, I work in an area of manufacturing called facilities. And I want to just explain a tiny bit about what that is before I go into what I have on the slide here. When we were looking in the video, or when Vanessa was talking about working in photolithography and in testing, you saw that there was like a whole almost encapsulated world in the factory, in the fab is what we call it, short for fabrication. And my team, the facilities team, you could also call it utilities team, we provide things like the clean water that's used for processing. We make sure that, like Ali was saying, that the air in the fab is super clean by that filtration system that's set up in there. We provide electricity, we provide all the gases, that sort of thing. So we're sort of the folks who supply the supporting materials needed for fabrication in that whole manufacturing scheme. And I am the person, the manager in charge of water production, so water purification, we call it ultra pure water, and wastewater treatment, so liquid industrial waste. So let me tell you a little bit about myself as far as kind of my early years. The way I have this set up is I've got like the early years on the left-hand side, all sorts of pictures of the ones I love in the middle, kind of my career timeline on the bottom, and then what were my aha moments, my key takeaways that I want you to take away from this conversation on the far right-hand side. So without further ado, I'll start in the center. So what you have here is a picture of me with my little family. I'm the wee person on the upper left corner. Not the weest person, the weest person is my brother. So that's my immediate little family. And then I got married and have a beautiful 6-year-old daughter who is super sassy, but I love her, over there on the right-hand side. And then the picture below is sort of the whole gaggle. My brother had a family. My folks are still around. We're all here local in Oregon, which is super awesome. And I feel super bad for the folks who are my neighbors because we get together and we're loud and you know, rowdy, but it's okay. We have a great time. And then my first loves of my life are my 2 kittens there. It's Sage and Leia, like Princess Leia, who are at this point old kitties. They're like 12. And then my dog, Ruby, who is super fun and I love her. So let me take a step back and tell you about sort of the progression of things for me. My dad was in the military, he was in the Navy, so we sort of moved all over the place. I lived in Europe for a while, or I should say, I went to school in Europe for a while. I went to school in different parts of the United States. And then we moved to Oregon because my dad got a job at this company called Intel. I didn't know anything about it until my dad started working here. So what I wanted to point out is the inclusion and diversity that Vanessa was talking about, super important. And for me, getting to interact with different people in different locations sort of throughout was eye-opening, right? It became a whole basis, and I still refer to it even now, right? That everybody's got something unique to contribute. So Vanessa, love your message. Let's talk about high school. So I am local here in Oregon. Graduated from Century High School in 2001. Okay, go Emily. I take it you're from there. So I'm a Jaguar through and through. As far as classes went, because I saw that there was some prep about some questions about, hey, what could you have done or what did you do in high school that helped you prepare? And so I wanted to chat about that just real briefly. I did do a bunch of AP classes. That was just the track I was on. If I'm honest, not necessary. It was great. It was great to have the exposure. It was good to have the credit for college. But in all honesty, I ended up doing a lot of the classes over again in college anyway. And so, and at my school at the time, the only AP classes that were available were AP Lit, so English, AP English, and AP Chemistry. I think it was still early days of that program. I think there's other AP classes available now. But for me, those were not as ultimately helpful, okay? The other thing was I did a bunch of sports and clubs. And the reason I mention that is because team skills, again, like Vanessa was mentioning, you almost never end up dealing with a problem on your own. It's not a silo in that sense. It is almost always a group of people. So getting exposure to things like working as a group, or just understanding how to bring information together, leading a team, or having a group discussion, super important. And I feel like a lot of that stuff you can learn in different sports and clubs. And then lastly, I mentioned the ASVAB, which is an aptitude test. I will be honest with y'all, and here's the deal. I'm bringing this up simply to illustrate it's okay to not know what you want to do. And I was one of those folks who took this aptitude test. It's a thing that was required when I was in school, and it's put on by the military. I don't remember which branch, but the idea is that you get a recommendation at the end of where your strengths are, and that sort of leads you towards which area or type of job function you might be interested in, because you would excel. It was inconclusive for me, didn't tell me much of anything. It was like, you work hard, you could do whatever you want to do. I hated it. I was really upset about it because I floundered a bit, not knowing what I wanted to do. But I can tell you, I did some soul searching and came to the point where I thought to myself, I love how do I put this? The universal truth associated with math and science. 2 + 2 is 4. I don't care what language you speak, right? I don't care where you come from. Like that is truth, right? And the fact that science is something that can be proven and disputed and reproven, because that's a thing, but that there's ultimately like a true, not really up for interpretation final answer. And that just appealed to me. So I went with it and ran. I'm going to skip this part about being hooked. No, I'm not. So as I said, Intel was kind of a thing for me. I didn't know anything about Intel until my dad got a job here. So I mentioned here that I got hooked early by this company, but I mean in general by manufacturing, specifically Intel, but in general, for a couple of reasons. So again, my dad worked there, so that was automatically something that was cool because I was aware of what they were and what they did. Also, the Intel Involved program, which is a volunteer program, enabled my dad to get me to go with him to go do some community service projects. Specifically, we did a lot of like cutting down blackberry bushes in tandem with like the Boy Scouts and stuff for one of the local Parks and Rec folks, Parks and Rec locations. Either way, the point is I loved the fact that Intel and that a manufacturing company was going out and doing good in the community. It was a big deal for me. The other thing I wanted to mention was my school at the time had a job shadow program. And if you went and did a job shadow, you got credit towards the degree. I don't remember 100% what the details were, but it was required. And I got to do a job shadow of an engineer who happened to work at the facility I work at now. And that was so eye-opening. I highly recommend that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, about how there's not really rules and how to go about getting a job. So I'll talk about that more in a second. And then internships. I did a ton of internships, and I'll talk more about why that's important when I do the aha moments here in a little bit as well. So I, after high school, went to Oregon State University. I got 2 degrees. I got my bachelor's of science in chemical engineering, and then also my master's in chemical engineering. It is minuscule. You cannot see it. I realize that, but that's me with my graduating class. It's like 32 people, all said and done. So that's us. And then I just have pictures of me kind of throughout all the different points in my life. I'm going to run through this real high level because I just want to point out that the path to manufacturing isn't always beautiful and clear. Like I was commenting to Ashley before, I am really envious of Ashley. Ashley knew exactly what she wanted to do and went straight into it, which was awesome. But for me, the path was all over the place before I finally got to where I wanted to be when I grew up. So I, after school, could not find a job in semiconductors, which is where I thought I wanted to be. But E&J Gallo, which is a wine company, an adult beverage company, was hiring people. So I went and I did research and development there. Super cool. Outside work, a lot of hands-on applied technology, which was awesome. From there, and that was in California. From there, I moved to Florida, and I worked for a company called Liberty Tire. Liberty Tire is a tire recycling company. So they take a tire, break it down into the 3 main components in a tire, which is rubber, metal, and fiber, cloth, if you will. And the metal and the fiber gets recycled, but the rubber is broken down to an appropriate size or cut down to an appropriate size. And then they use it for things like the Department of Transportation was using it for the roads, for concrete. Concrete. We were selling it to athletic companies for turf infill. And then also, if you ever look at playgrounds and they've got like that rubberized flooring, that's also that material. So from there, and I was doing their quality control compliance. We kind of set up an entire quality control department there, which again, the quality control side of manufacturing, because you need to make sure your product is good before you can give it to anybody. From there, I went to Florida Crystals, which is, again, still in Florida, but was a sugar manufacturer. The place I worked, Osceola Farms, is a intermediate. They did raw sugar, so it still needed to go for additional processing. It's very similar to like the sugar in the raw, the dark brown, larger crystals. Anyway, there I was again on the quality control side. I was their chief chemist in their main lab doing quality control there. From there, I finally made it back to Oregon and in the semiconductor industry. I was at ON Semiconductor, which was previously LSI Logic. And you have to forgive me, I call it a factory process engineer. I'm sure Vanessa will cringe because, again, from a person who's in facilities now, the factory is where all the magic happens. So I was a person who worked in the factory, but now I see myself in a different light. I worked in what was called wet etch and in diffusion. So I did a lot of cool tool maintenance and process optimization with all sorts of chemical processing tools, for lack of a better way of putting it. And then from there, I got into facilities. I was a liquid industrial waste engineer. Like I had mentioned, that's mostly our wastewater. Now, Ashley's going to laugh because she was one of my environmental folks when I was a liquid industrial waste engineer, and she knows I'm way oversimplifying it, but started being the system owner here at the Aloha site for wastewater treatment. Then from there, went to do ultra pure water treatment and manufacturing. From there, I went into a technical programs manager for the CS team, which is, I've been on the same team the whole time I've been at Intel. I did things like their finances, their capacity calculations, statistical process control, like what any technical program they had, we needed somebody to run it. And recently, and I say recently in the last 2 years, I've been doing people management for, again, the same team. So that's been kind of a neat little progression. And in that picture there, you've got my team. Let me get to the aha moment. So if you take nothing away, I want you to know you don't have to love math. One of the things when I talk to folks about wanting to go into manufacturing or a technical field, maybe engineering, is, but I'm no good at math. I hate math. No, okay, listen. Math is a tool. It's just like a hammer. You don't have to love hammers. You don't have to know everything there is to know about hammers. It's just something that you need to use. So you don't have to love it. You just need to not hate it. Okay. Second thing, school is hard. And Vanessa was mentioning this. School is hard. The homework problems you do are not representative of what it's like to have a real job in the field. So, and as I mentioned earlier, internships, super important to me in particular, because I had difficulties in school. It was a lot of work. It was a big shock going through the engineering program. And the internships that I had along the way showed me what work was going to be like. And it was so much more satisfying and, quite honestly, kept me motivated because I knew I wasn't going to be doing all this crazy calculations. I was going to be helping people solve problems, which was a big thing for me. I kind of mentioned this earlier. Career paths are sometimes jagged and take unexpected twists and turns. Embrace it. Just go with it. As long as you feel like your core beliefs are being met, you're good. Don't worry about it. And then I mentioned this before also with the team stuff. You will be surprised how many non-technical skills you end up using in manufacturing. So I just highly recommend folks to not forget to level those up. If it's having good communication, if it's being able to summarize well, lead a team, have a discussion, that sort of thing, it's still really important and, quite honestly, equally important as the technical education that you need. And that my friends are my big like lightning bolt moments that I had up until now. That's everything for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for sharing. It was really interesting learning about what each of you do and your career journeys and what stood out about Intel in terms of diversity and inclusion. So now we are at the Q&A portion, and this can really just be a conversation about what any of you found interesting. If you have any questions, we'll open up the floor for you, and you can also use the chat feature as well.
Thank you.
Oh, Karen, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
All right, third time is a charm. Thank you everyone for putting the presentation together and sharing it. It was really informative and interesting to hear how each of your journeys got you to where you are. So yeah, for all of the students who are watching, yeah, hit everyone with some questions. Well, maybe we're waiting for students to ask some questions or figure out one of mine that I had was, how does Intel support you in your career development as you grow within the areas where you started at and to where you are now? What does that look like?
I have an answer. So I'm not sure if you've heard about it, but Intel does this really unique thing where people get sabbaticals. So if you're at Intel for 4 years, you get 4 weeks of paid vacation. If you wait for 7 years, you get 8 weeks of paid vacation. And it's really unique because a lot of companies don't allow employees to leave for such a long length of time, and kind of reset and to stop burnout essentially. But because people are often coming and going and leaving and doing their thing, it really opens up opportunities for other employees at the company to do small assignments or like projects in groups that they might be interested in, or even coverage opportunities. So in my 8 years at Intel, I've been able to cover people's maternity leave, where I was really interested in what other sites were doing, and figuring out what work over there is like. I've been able to do temporary assignments in the sustainability group, and figure out like what their goals are and how my work contributes to them. And I've also been able to do things with our corporate responsibility report, helping them gather information, helping them actually publish the report. And I've been able to do all these things without leaving my current job, because sometimes it's really scary having a stable job and being a technical expert in something and then going and doing something completely different without at least knowing that you might like it. So Intel offers opportunities for employees to just dabble in different things to see if you even like something new. And then if you do, help you get to that part. So in that way, at Intel, it's a lot easier to move between different groups and learn new skills that you might not have the opportunity to do at a smaller company.
And then
Oh,
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to expand on that, but if you have a follow-up question, then.
No, go ahead.
So when I started as a brand new engineer, and this is kind of still today the case. So in order to kind of come up to speed as an engineer in the factory, it takes about 6 months for most new engineers to become able to do their job at a basic level. So when you start, there's not an expectation that you're going to be, running the show all by yourself. It takes a while to learn your process. It takes a while to learn about the equipment you're using. It takes a while to learn all of the people that you will be working with and you know, at a big company. And like I said before, it's very rare that you can do anything all by yourself. You typically need to work with others to get things done. So it takes a while to build those relationships with people and get to know everyone. And so for that first 6 months, you're mostly in training mode. You are learning about all kinds of things. And when I was new, I would, for example, so I had some process equipment. We call them tools in the fab. So we buy a dedicated piece of purpose-built equipment from another company, and we call it a tool, but you may be thinking like hammer. It's a lot bigger and more complicated than a hammer. It's like maybe the size of a semi-truck trailer, or maybe a little smaller. And so I got to go to Austin for 2 weeks to learn about that piece of equipment. There's a lot of investment that Intel does in employees to get you trained to learn about all the things you need to know in order to be successful at your job. And there is a lot of investment. Like, we will hire someone and spend, you know, basically for 6 months, they take that time to train, and, you know, you're getting paid the whole time. And we invest a lot in bringing people up to speed, and making sure they're equipped with all of the knowledge they need to be successful in their job. And I've never felt like I was put in a position to make decisions that I wasn't qualified to make or ready to make, or wasn't set up for success. And if I felt that way, you know, I could always raise my hand and say, hey, I need this. In terms of resources, I've never not gotten anything I've asked for with respect to learning things. And there's also internal things like we have access to online classes to learn things, soft skills. We have programs to teach people about the technical knowledge that they need to be able to do their jobs, and also reduce silos. Because, for example, I don't know a ton about what Eileen does on a day-to-day basis, and maybe I would like to learn more to see how what I do with my equipment affects her team. For example, if I'm going to be dumping a bunch of chemicals down the drain more so than usual, does Eileen need to know that? Do I need to give her a heads up about that? For her to make sure that the waste systems are going to be able to handle a bigger amount of drainage than usual. And so there's a lot of opportunities to learn. I am continuously learning, which is one thing I really love about my job. And Intel has been very supportive of all of that.
If I can tag on, like Vanessa was saying, it's a continuous learning environment, in the sense that, to give you an example, so when I went into that program management role, ended up taking a certification and a test, a certification course and a test to be officially certified as a project manager, program manager. And Intel supported that. They gave me not only the funding to pursue it, but also the time to go study and prepare for the exam, take the exam, things like that. So like Vanessa said, you get a lot of help and support up front, but also whenever you need it, right? Like, that was only 4 years ago for me. And that was, I don't know, mid-career as far as how long I've been there. So yeah, they were super supportive. And like Ashley said, there's a lot of opportunity to move around within Intel once you're here. And wholeheartedly, completely agree. The idea is, if you're here and you don't feel like you're in the right space and you need to find a new place, Intel would much rather have you go to a different organization within Intel than leave, right? They're super into keeping folks here and making sure that they are where they should be and what will make them ultimately happy. And the one last thing I would mention is Intel has a very large and successful mentorship program, in the sense that you can sign up or organically just connect with somebody who you admire and link up with them, and they can help coach you on, help you develop a skill, help you through a difficult situation. I have done that myself. I've gotten a lot of help with the presentation skills, putting together PowerPoint slides, even just dealing with some difficult conversations. So there's a lot of support for development here. I know that's a super long-winded answer. You got all three of us, but yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Having the input and the perspective from each of you of what that is like. So I think that was really valuable. Thank you. Is there an education assistance? So if you want to continue on, like if you want to get your master's degree or continue to take more certificates that are outside of Intel, do they help pay for that? Is that available?
Absolutely. There's so we have a lot of, for example, technicians who work while they're getting their bachelor's degree that Intel pays for. As long as there is a business application for the degree, then Intel will pay for it. There are some minor exceptions. Some groups will pay for MBAs, which is a master's in business administration. Some groups will not. But you can go through a process and get tuition reimbursed for a degree program as long as there is somewhere at Intel business applicability to it.
Thank you. Let's see. I don't see any questions in the chat. Hi, is there any questions there? Clearly.
I have a question. My question is, do any of you have any tips or tricks for students that are interested in working for Intel, how to kind of start that process in terms of internships and applying for jobs? Because I know that Intel is very competitive and they have hundreds of people applying for jobs all the time. So for any students that are looking as like a place to start, how do you recommend people starting to get into Intel?
I would say I can start. With a lot of job acquisition things that people will tell you, it's a lot of the times it's all about who you know. So now you know 3 or 4 people who work at Intel. You can feel free to reach out to, well, I'm not going to volunteer everyone, but you can reach out to me. I'll put my work email in the chat. And you can say, hey, Vanessa, do you have any tips? And I'll say, hey, I can put you in the system as a referral. And I can also take a look at your resume. I've done things in the past with various, as part of my volunteer work. I've done mock interviews with folks. I've done resume reviews, and I'm happy to give you that feedback or work with you on that. In ideally a situation where it's appropriate. And also you can reach out and say, hey, I'm interested in shadowing you, or I don't like exactly what you do. Do you know anybody in this space that I could shadow? And, I know a lot of people, so maybe I do know somebody in that area that would be happy to help you.
And then I know a lot of Oregon universities are part of a program called MECOP. I forget what MECOP stands for exactly. Eileen, I don't know if you remember, but essentially it's an internship program at the universities. And there's a list of students and there's a list of companies that join. And it's a great way to have longer internships and have multiple internships so that you're getting experience not only in industry like Intel, and I think Boeing is also part of it, but also in like consulting firms and government agencies and that kind of thing. So the whole point of the program is you get internship experience, but it's not just in one particular sector, because what you're really trying to do with internships is figure out what type of work you want to be doing after you graduate. I know that MECOP is Oregon University specific, but there might be something similar in non-Oregon universities as well. But that's the one that I know of locally.
Yeah, you're so right, Ashley. I know there's partnerships with other universities that are less local, but I'm just not familiar with which universities and exactly what the partnerships are. I'm going to go ahead and state the obvious. There is the website where we would be posting most of this stuff, which is the job.intel.com. And honestly, like even just searching there occasionally for internships will be a good, you know, if you're not comfortable with the whole know someone thing, that's a good place to start and just start applying. And I would say apply all the time, not just as you're approaching summer, because there are some groups that can help folks get experience while they're still going to school, right? So it's not necessarily, oh, a summer internship or like that MECOP program, which is a 6-month program that alternates. And then I know Vanessa mentioned it, but I think job shadows are a huge help, because if you can get in the door and start meeting some folks, you don't know what you don't know, right? So whenever you have the opportunity to talk to someone who has a job here, it's a chance for you to decide, like, do I even like this? Do I like all the details of what they do in their everyday? And you might have touch points with other groups and other people. Like Vanessa was saying, we know a lot of folks, we interact with a lot of folks. So I think it's a matter of just trying to find out as much as you can about all the different orgs, because again, for me, like I always thought I was going to be a tool owner in the factory doing process engineering. And then this whole new world opened up for me when I finally entered the facilities realm. So it's worth getting to know folks and learning about their different areas.
Hey, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, this is Blake Horner. I also work at Intel. I just wanted to mention, as we were talking about our partnerships with colleges and universities, that we have this really exciting program that's called Quick Start to Manufacturing that supports making sure that we're fostering a diverse pipeline of hires into our workforce, specifically in manufacturing roles. And all folks need for that is a desire to work in manufacturing and a high school diploma. And so I would encourage anyone who is interested in pursuing to consider that. If you just Google PCC Quick Start, you'll be able to see it. There's actually just an article in the Oregonian about it. And it's a really great way to get people who don't have a ton of prior experience in engineering, a way to get an interview with Intel. All of the graduates from that program get an interview with Intel. It's a 2-week accelerated program, and you actually get paid $500 a week to be a part of the program. As long as you show up and you're authentically wanting to pursue this, then you'll get paid $500 a week. So it's a really awesome opportunity. I know there's a waiting list right now because a lot of people are excited about it, but I'd recommend for anyone who's interested in that to consider that as a potential avenue. Yeah, all you need is a high school diploma and a desire to work in manufacturing. So just thought I'd mention that. Yeah, if you Google PCC and Quick Start, you'll be able to see more information about it.
Thank you, Blake. We do have a couple questions from some students. We have Jillian asked, do you have higher standards for those who graduate from different countries?
For
I can answer that one.
Okay, good, because I don't know.
So Intel is a global company, so we recognize degrees from other countries. So of course, everyone's situation is unique. So I can't guarantee that everyone with a degree from a different country is able to get a job at Intel. But I can say that the great thing is that we operate not just in Oregon, it's our largest site, but we also operate sites across the world. And so we can hire folks who have degrees from different countries, including I know also that Quick Start program I mentioned, they also recognize high school diplomas from.
Blake, you cut out there. The last thing we heard was Quick Start recognizes high school diplomas.
Yep, that's all I had to say.
Okay.
And I know that personally, I've done a lot of interviews for internships as well as jobs, and we barely look at the where of the degree, just that it exists. And honestly, I don't even really do that assessment. There's like an HR type of screening that goes first, and then before I get the resume. But when I'm looking at it, it's not something that I pay particular focus to.
Thank you. And then Alora asked, how flexible are the internships and shadowing opportunity hours during the school year?
I guess I should clarify something. When I say job shadow, and Vanessa, correct me, because I know you mentioned shadows as well, so maybe you have a different opinion. But when I mention a shadow, it's not like a prolonged experience. It's usually isolated to a day. And it would be the kind of thing where, hey, we'll pick a day that's convenient for everybody. Maybe it's a Thursday or maybe it's a Saturday because you're in school, and you'd essentially come to work with me, more or less. And you would shadow in the sense that, the meetings where it's okay for you to come because of intellectual property and that sort of thing. You would come with me. I'd talk to you about the kinds of things I do on a daily basis. It would be kind of just a day in the life of, if you will. So as far as shadowing goes, I think that's really flexible. It's just a matter of making sure that there's a time between the person you're shadowing and you, and that timing works out, right? Internships, I'm going to let someone else handle, because I know like some of that's predefined, like with the MECOP program. I know that internships are certain months. And
Yeah, and I just want to mention that with our Intel internships, so we specifically have internships for folks who are also enrolled in some sort of college program, like some after high school program. So you need to be enrolled in education simultaneously in order to qualify for one of our internships, either a graduate or undergraduate degree. But I'll say I was an intern when I was going to Portland State University. Allie on this call also was an intern going to University of Portland. And in my experience, it's super flexible. My work always told me school comes first, and you just work with your manager to determine a schedule that works for you.
Yeah, and from my experience, I will say we've had interns that are part of the generic intern schedule, so like a summer intern or a MECOP intern that does the fall semester. But once they got their foot in the door, if they wanted to negotiate, oh, I have time next semester, I would like to continue to work at Intel. Would I be able to do 10 hours a week? Since we've already made that connection, we've been able to work with our human resources and their school and figure that out as well. So I think once you do get into a more formalized internship experience here, it does become a lot more flexible.
I guess I would just say it never hurts to ask.
That too.
Just ask for what you need, right? Because yeah, we've done the same thing. We've had somebody do an internship and say, I'm still available. Why don't I just keep doing it? And then they ended up doing this whole remote so many hours a week and come on site once a month kind of deal. And we kept them for a few more months even. So yeah, just ask. I mean, the worst thing that'll happen is someone says no.
I know Portland State University is part of the MECOP program for a local university here. Let's see, I don't see any new questions. So can each of you give like a little brief, what does a day in the life of your work day look like? And I know that always varies day to day, but just kind of a general glimpse if you can.
I can give a real high level overview. My day starts around 6:30. It is at 7 o'clock, we have our pass down, which is when our night shift is leaving and our day shift is coming on. They do a touch point in between, and we talk about what has happened on the previous shift and what's going to happen, what's scheduled, what's hot. And the reason I start about half hour prior to that is because I want to catch any emergencies or fires that are occurring, and I mean proverbial, not literal fires, that are happening prior to that meeting, so that I can go informed to that meeting and we can develop a plan of attack. And then throughout the day, I've got, again, I'm a manager now in this particular group, so I do a lot of meeting with folks to talk about how they're progressing, what their development is like. I also get into a lot of program details, like making sure we've got a budget set up for next quarter and what that is, what are we going to be spending our time on. But it really does truly become a lot of being there and helping with solutions pertaining to operation stuff. So something broke, okay, well, we need to figure out how quickly can we get somebody on site to fix it, or can we fix it ourselves? How much is that going to cost? Where can we fund it from? Or do we now have like what we call an interruption to production, which is our issue is going to impact the people in the factory and they won't be able to continue running their tools, that sort of thing. So it's a mishmash of those flavors of things all day long.
Thank you.
For me, I would say a typical day might be I kind of browse through my email to see if there's anything that needs my attention in the morning. We work with partners in Israel and Ireland. So if there's anything from one of my colleagues over there, I'll try to get to that in the morning, because there's a higher likelihood that they are still at work because of time zones. And so the morning is kind of dedicated to any kind of international communication that might need to happen. Next is I might have some meetings. So for me, I do a lot of supporting of the factory. So I might meet with somebody who has a challenge that I am able to hopefully fix. So maybe I'll talk to them about what their problem is. What is inefficient about their situation? What can I do to help solve it? And then maybe the rest of the day is me working on ways to solve that problem, seeing what data I can find, seeing what systems exist, maybe asking some questions of some of the people I know, and then maybe having some meetings with my own team and trying to get some work done.
And I guess for me, 2 months ago, it's very different from what it is now. If you remember, I had a different job 2 months ago. So when I was an environmental engineer, it was a lot more regimented 8 to 5 kind of deal where, similar to Eileen, I would wake up, make sure that there are no emergencies. If there are, handle the emergencies. And then a lot of the meetings or the physical site walks during that day would be to tackle kind of short-term goals of these are the reports that need to be filled, this is the data I need to collect, and then hopefully gathering that information to be able to do that work. Now in my role more on the supply chain side, I work with a lot of suppliers in Asia. So meetings tend to either be very early in the morning or kind of late at night, which depending on if you're a morning person or a night person is not the most ideal. But I think the thing that's changed a lot from me being closer to the facilities to a little bit further away and working more on the global scale is a level of flexibility. So maybe in the morning, I'll have some early morning meetings, do my emails, get a little bit of work done. But then in the afternoon, I will go get groceries and, take my dog for a very long walk. And then later on, if I have a later on evening meeting, take that. So there's a level of trust of you are an adult, you know what you're doing. These are the tasks that you have to complete. But you're not expected to be online 8 hours straight. It's what works for your schedule and what works for your lifestyle. So I also know a lot of people have kids that they have to, take to school in the morning or pick up in the afternoon. And the work, at least on the supply chain side that I'm in now, is really trying to make it so that you can do both things. Because it's not like the suppliers are going to be on your West Coast hours anyway. So being able to have that flexibility in your day-to-day work, I think has been the biggest change for me.
That's nice to hear that there's some support around that work-life balance, and when you are working with people from locations around the world, that the understanding that if I'm having to get up really early or stay up really late, that there's time in between there to take care of life as needed. So I know with each of you being women in engineering, and women are still underrepresented in this field, can you talk about maybe some particular challenges that you've had, or what your experience has been like as you have grown in your careers around the support that you've received, and work that Intel is doing also to bring more women into engineering and manufacturing?
So silent, everybody. I guess I'll go first. Blake or Allie might be better to talk about the opportunities available, but as far as like being a woman in manufacturing is concerned, I did start at Intel when I was 23, so relatively young. And sometimes it's hard to tell if it's like an age thing or like a gender thing, but being taken seriously was a problem early on in my career. And the way that I was able to mitigate that was being overly prepared for things, which I don't know if that's the best answer, but being able to do a lot of pre-work and a lot of research, and to make sure that people saw me as a technical expert really alleviated any of the concerns of the people I was working with. So I think there was a hesitance in the beginning to ask me questions or to include me in projects, because when you're working quickly, you want an answer quickly and you want the right answer. So it's easy to go to people that you've always worked with and to have that bias towards them. But really forming relationships with the people that I'm working with and proving to them that I am capable, I think was the biggest hurdle early on in my career.
I'll tag on to that. A similar deal with me, although I wasn't quite as young. Being the new person and being a second with a more senior engineer at the time, same sort of deal. It was very much making sure that you were seen as a technical expert. Quite honestly, for me, it became a more social thing. Quite, if I'm being transparent, right? It was demonstrating credibility. Like, I don't know how better to say that you need to build trust with the folks that you work with. And the reason, or the way I was able to do that, was do what I say I was going to do, right? And I did that long enough and consistently enough that folks knew if I said I was going to take care of something, I was going to take care of it. And those things were technical things. So folks started seeing, okay, she has this reputation for following through and being technically correct, and started being seen as a subject matter expert. I had to do the same thing as Ashley, though, just be vocal and make sure I was right. One of the things that I got really comfortable saying, though, was I'd rather be right than be fast or appear smart. And I would tell people that outright, You can either get the right answer or you can try to go off of this maybe not quite right memory that I have. And so there's no issue in saying, look, I don't know, I'll get back to you. And then actually getting back to somebody with the right answer. Just wanted to touch on the fact that I'm still one of very few ladies on my team. At my whole site department, I'm one of 2. And if I'm transparent, my journey throughout school, because when I was in school, class of 30 kids, we had 7 girls. And ever since there, it's always been, I've been one of 2 or 3 or the only female. I've never had what I would say are like serious, significant issues with it because I was never really treated poorly. What I did run into was, like Ashley was saying, the need to exert myself perhaps more than someone else, right? To really show how confident I am in my technical skills to ensure that I'm being heard. That was the big thing for me.
I'll also add that there are a lot of programs in place to help women feel more connected and like we belong. So at my site, and this is something Eileen participates in, there's a program where technical women will mentor other technical women. And so we have, groups, circles, we call them, where we talk about issues that may be specific to women or maybe not, but we just have that point to, create connections and build bonds between one another. There's the Women at Intel Network, which is an employee resource group that puts on events. We do networking type stuff and all kinds of cool things. And there's a lot of infrastructure in place to make it, to show that Intel values diversity and that women are welcome here. We still have a problem with the pipeline where engineering graduates women are not equally represented in that population. So we do what we can to match the population, the pipeline and the market availability of women, but it can be tough when there aren't a lot of women who are getting engineering degrees or pursuing jobs in manufacturing.
I'll just add that Intel has a pretty ambitious goal of getting 40% representation of women in technical roles by 2030. Right now, we're probably at around 25%. And as you've heard, it's difficult when we're sourcing talent, and we know that the folks who are graduating from engineering schools and interested in manufacturing, that ratio might not be exactly where we need it to be to get to that 40%. So that's actually why it's so important for us to do outreach like this. I mean, all of you people who are listening to this and interested in working in manufacturing can be part of the change to diversify what manufacturing looks like. I was, not to mention Quick Start again, but I was just at their graduation of their second all-female class. And the PCC president, Dr. Adrienne Bennings, gave a really powerful speech. And one thing she said is, you now are part of leading the way for future generations of women to be able to see what it's like to work in manufacturing and see themselves in that. And so just as these awesome folks today are leading the way by sharing their stories, if you all are interested in doing this and pursuing it, not only are you pursuing something for yourself, but you can also be paving the way for future generations.
Thank you. That is some great tips and insights that you provided, and I like that Intel has that Rise 2030 with the commitment to getting to that 40%. And yeah, I mean, it takes takes trailblazers and stepping up. And I think it's great that the pipeline through events like here in School to Career and other opportunities within the high schools and the Quick Start to get connected and that mentoring and to see what's available right here in our local community, right? You don't have to go clear across the country to find these jobs that Intel is so strong, and some of the other manufacturers here too also, right? But you know, specifically with the work that Intel has been doing with all of the schools is great. I know there was one more question that Laura had asked, is there any opportunities for high schoolers?
Allie, do you want to take this one?
I'm actually not sure of that question. I don't think so, but that's something that I can check on and get back to you.
Yeah, I'll say that. So as I mentioned, that our internship program is specific for folks who are in school after high school. But we recommend, I mean, the best way to prepare yourself is to attend events like these, explore programs like VCOP or other high school programs that where you can learn things about engineering and robotics. Get involved in clubs in your school and other things that can give you the experience where you're able to show up to either pursue a degree after college or after high school, or go into a program that only requires a high school diploma like Quick Start, and you will have a little bit of that prior knowledge from what you've learned in high school. So I'd say keep attending events like these and just stay curious, and that will help prepare you for opportunities after high school.
I love it. Stay curious. That's one of the lines that we have with our School to Career is that career is the discover and explore. And you know, if you have an interest, always ask. You can go to your college career coordinators at your high schools and reach out also to our program, and we will get you connected with different people. And if there's interest in career events that you want to see happen, you know, let us know and we can work on that. So thank you. I think all of you had some really great information to share. Allie, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, yes.
And thank you. And so I know we have reached our little over 11:30. Last chance for all of those students who are participating. If you have any questions, feel free to ask it now. You can unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we'll give it a few minutes, but otherwise, I think what we'll do is just wrap it up, and I will give a moment here for anybody to ask anything. Anybody on my team have a burning question? All right. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate all of you taking your time. Allie, Vanessa, Ashley, Eileen, and Blake.